So, good evening, everyone. Today we have with us Mr. Dilpreet Singh, IPS. He secured All India rank 237 in UPSC Civil Services exam 2020. He became IPS in his third attempt. Prior to that, he cleared Punjab PCS twice. For the first time, he became Tehsildar, and for the second time, he became SDM. He graduated in 2018 from Punjab Engineering College. He's a mechanical engineer. So, welcome, Dilpreet. Thank you for taking out your
Thank
time
you.
and joining us. So,
Thank
before
you.
I hand it over to Dilpreet, let me clarify a few things. The agenda for the meet is how can working professionals stay consistent and how can they manage time. It is his webinar. He will address all of us initially. After that, he will take all of yours questions. So you can type your questions down in the comment box. Please keep your microphones muted, and please do not speak in between. You can type down your questions, and he will take most of your questions. Over to you, Dilpreet.
So, hello, fellow aspirants. As I have been very generously introduced, I'm Dilpreet Singh. I've recently joined Indian Police Service. So, our agenda and ambit of discussion today, number one is working professionals. How to strategize the UPSC attempt for the working professionals. So, in that, there are various stages in which various types of working professionals. One who have completed their syllabus and then they join some job or then they're into some kind of jobs. So for them, the strategy is like they just have to hone their skills, right? So 3 to 4 hours daily would suffice for them because they don't have to do the core syllabus. They just have to hone their skills, refine their mains notes, and to prepare for prelims laterally. So for them, 3 to 4 hours is sufficient. And what I will suggest is कि before going to office, if you can switch your circadian rhythm in such a way that you wake up quite early, like 4, 5, because in these metro cities we have a lot of hustle. So if you wake up early, so at that time there is a lot of peace of mind. Plus, there is a lot of the engagements are very less. So if you can manage the morning routine in which you can spare at least 3 hours, so that will be very beneficial for you. So the second stage of aspirants, second type of aspirants are who are starting from scratch and they have to complete the whole syllabus as well, but due to some compulsion they have to keep their job as well, right? So for them they need to chug out a solid 5 to 6 hours. Now I presuppose that if you are a working professional and wanting to prepare for civil services and you need coaching, number one is you don't need coaching. One permutation combination is this. So for that, you got to do rigorous self-study, and 5 to 6 hours schedule is a must. Second is for those who are joining some online coaching course and are working side by side. So for them, what I'll suggest is, after coming from office, you watch the classes, you watch the online classes, because watching online classes, you just gotta be internally motivated, and the bent of mind can be done after office as well. But for revision, you got to do it before you wake up in the morning. So what I'll suggest is ki 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours for the classes. This should be your routine for the next 1.5 years, so that you complete your syllabus being a working professional. And people always ask me ki our social life it might get troubled, or I'll have very less time for very less me time. So we gotta come to terms with the fact that there's gotta be a trade-off, right? So on one hand you want to retain your job, on one hand you've got to prepare for one of the toughest exams in India. So there's got to be a trade-off if you want this permutation and combination. So the trade-off is ki you'll always be short of time, and you will have to decrease your social engagements. You can go out occasionally when the stress levels are beyond your control. And always, what I'll suggest is always be into some kind of hobby, be it yoga, be it meditation, be it any kind of sports. Like you may play badminton for a game or two, or be it running, be it hitting the gym for like half an hour. So develop a hobby that helps to keep the stress levels quite down. So these are basically some tips for working professionals that they can use. Apart from that, the next part I'd like to focus is I flunked prelims twice in my attempt, first two attempts. So I could not clear UPSC prelims, although there were other reasons as well, because I was into PCS cycle, and that was one of the reasons. But the other major. So what additional I did in my third attempt that made me clear the prelims? Number one, I gave disproportionate focus on science and tech and environment. So with the clubbing of Indian Forest Service prelims with the UPSC prelims as well. So the weightage of environment has increased a lot. So I gave a disproportionate focus on environment. I would think laterally. I had prepared all the national parks. I had a fair enough knowledge that what kind of vegetation, what kind of animal, flora and fauna were there in its vicinity, what kind of rivers cross through it. I went into details of international treaties, looking at their websites in my free time. So these are some things you could do to disproportionately focus on environment along with science and tech. Right. Second thing is attempting full mocks. See, sectionals are important, but full mocks carry a very balanced view of prelims. Like it has questions from all the components. So attempt as much as of full mocks you can. That will help you to boost your confidence. Number two. So number three is you don't get disheartened by prelims scores in various test series. Rather, compare your scores with your peers. So in my case, what I did was I had some friends who used to clear prelims every year. But despite be the difficulty of the paper, they used to clear prelims by a margin of 10 or 20 marks. So what I did was I used to give tests with them, and then I used to analyze that how did they reach the quotient, what theorems or what are the guessing techniques they would use. And to my surprise, uh, most of my friends would use the same technique to arrive at the answer. Right, their thought process was on similar lines, and from that I followed that what kind of guessing sense you should develop while giving prelims. So this was in brief some things which I did. One was attempting a lot of full mocks tests. Second was giving tests with my peers who helped me to grow and learn the guessing skills. And the third one being the first point that I talked about. See, iske baad, after prelims, what is happening over the years is that prelims is becoming very dicey. So you never know कि you'll clear prelims or not. राइट. तो प्रीलिम्स का इतना डिफिकल्ट होना, तो व्हाट शुड बी द स्ट्रेटेजी? एक तो 3 पॉइंट जो मैंने आपको बताए. चौथी चीज जो हमने करनी है वो है कि न्यूज़पेपर में इफ यू इनकाउंटर कोई भी न्यू टर्म आती है, सम न्यू प्लेस, फॉर एग्जांपल इफ यूक्रेन इज वाज इन न्यूज़ ड्यू टू द वॉर सिनेरियो, so you should have at least looked at the geography, which rivers flow through it, is there any landlocked country alongside it, मतलब उसकी geography you should have known. So ऐसे ही if any new place, if any new term is in news, right, like industrial revolution 4.0, उस पे कुछ question आ जाएगा. So any new term you should think laterally, and you should go back, google that term and think out of the box, because prelims not only you require now standard knowledge but random knowledge as well, right? So random knowledge should also be incorporated. अब इसके अलावा इफ वी फोकस अपॉन मेंस, कि मेंस जो आंसर राइटिंग है उसको कैसे टैकल करना है, या मेंस का कंटेंट बिल्डिंग कैसे करना है. फॉर मेंस एक तो है कि कंटेंट आपका एक क्वालिटी कंटेंट प्रिपेयर होना चाहिए. सो अगर आप वो क्वालिटी कंटेंट प्रिपेयर कर लेते हैं तो 70% ऑफ योर वर्क इज डन, राइट. उसके बाद इट इज अबाउट होनिंग योर स्किल्स. That is 30% of the task, and that comes from answer writing, rigorous answer writing. अब कंटेंट प्रिपेयर करने का भी तरीका है. या तो यू कैन रैंडमली whatever the coaching institute has fed you, या तो you just rely on that and then you attempt your answers, या फिर you can make your own notes by adding value to it. And mind you, all the toppers, they have made their own notes from various sources for mains. That is why they score pretty well in mains. For example, if it is for any topic like globalization is one topic in society, GS1, right? So what I'll do is something will be taught to me in class, okay, regarding globalization. I'll go back and I'll search globalization with UPSC keyword, and I'll look at 2 to 3 websites, good websites like CivilsDaily, like other in websites as well. So from that, I'll make a structure out of it. I'll see how those websites and how into various subheadings, and from that I'll make my own structure of topic, and I'll fill that structure with the content which is being which I have learned from the websites as well as class. For example, if it is for globalization, we can do a simple enough definition of World Bank, that it is the increased integration of societies and economies of the world. So I got a World Bank definition. So this I can use in the definition part. Apart from definition, what I could do is some data on globalization, like the world trade, how it has grown, or how migrations have increased since the era of globalization. So second is some data. Third is some quotation. Like there's a quotation by Lord Robertson. It's the first quotation you'll search on Google. Like globalization has made the world more creative and prosperous, but at the same time more vulnerable. So this quotation you can use anywhere in the intro, in the conclusion when globalization comes. Then you can do is dimensions of globalization. Like we have pestle analysis, political dimension, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. Apart from that, there are ideological dimensions to globalization. There are security dimensions to globalization as well. So, like this, you can evaluate the various dimensions of globalization. Apart from that, there are impacts of globalization. Now, these impacts can again be analyzed in terms of pestle analysis or in terms of positive or negative impacts of globalization, right? And then there are short notes on globalization, like globalization and culture. What is the impact of globalization and culture? Globalization and democracy, globalization and sovereignty, globalization and family, globalization and youth, globalization and religion. So we can always prepare these short debates on globalization as well. And then there is this topic, deglobalization, right? What is deglobalization? What are the incidents which highlight the deglobalization phenomenon, for example, Brexit? And what are the causes behind deglobalization? Some data, if you could quote, that how the world trade as a percentage of world GDP has come down a little. That is the data for deglobalization. And then you can conclude the topic with either the quotation you mentioned earlier or any decent enough conclusion you want. So what I'm trying to convey is key. I took globalization. Some of the aspects out of it were taught to me in class. Some of the aspects I got to know by Google searches, by looking at various websites, and then I clubbed all, made a structure out of it, and then made my own notes. So this is how you add value to your mains content. So mind you, when this content is prepared in such a way of all the GS subjects, so you'll feel very confident in answer writing, because your intro and conclusion of every topic will be ready, and all you got to do in those 7 minutes is that you have to write the body which is contextual, which is what is being asked. So it will save a lot of time, as well as it will add value. And if you do content in this manner, suppose you write a quotation in the question of globalization, right? So it will at least fetch you half marks. And mind you, half marks in 20 questions is 10 marks per paper, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 40 marks if you can get by doing such an incremental exercise. 40 marks में पूरी rank list है UPSC की, if you see, right? So what I'll advise is to make your own notes on every topic, brainstorm and add to your own notes. This is how you can complete a mains topic. Now, shifting upon answer writing, once you're done with your content, or you can start it side by side as well. You could then focus rigorously on answer writing. And in answer writing, there are various stages to it. One is you got to learn the keywords, right? Like discuss, analyze, examine, critically analyze. What are the basic differences? डोंट गो, मतलब बहुत ज्यादा पिकी नहीं होना इन कीवर्ड्स को लेके, बट हाँ एक जनरल मीनिंग पता होना चाहिए. फॉर एग्जाम्पल डिस्कशन, इट्स अ डिबेट. You gotta present both sides of the argument. Analyze is basically dividing the question into parts and addressing all those parts. This is what analyze means. ठीक है. ऐसे ही examine. Examine is nothing but explaining with examples. See, examples are very important in examine keyword. Similarly, there are other keywords like explain, which is a genuine one of the same things as explain. So in this way, if critical is being asked, so you got, so one is the keywords. Second is what I felt is that there is a particular kind of space which is being provided in the answer sheets in mains, right? So for example, for 10 markers, there are two pages which are being provided. So what you got to do is, you got to just, there is very little scope in 10 markers, right? You got to write just 2 to 3 lines of intro and then directly shift to the main content of the question, and then just 3 to 4 lines of conclusion. What people tend to do is, because they feel that they know the basic content, the what is being asked in the question very less, what they do is they try to stretch the intro and they try to stretch the conclusion, and the body gets squeezed into one small paragraph. So this is something I'll advise against. Even if you know, even if you don't know, जब content हम अपना पूरा prepare कर लेंगे ना, तो ऐसा कोई question नहीं होगा in which you don't know anything. That I'm sure. ठीक है, तो write 3 to 4 very brief intro and then directly hit the demand of the question. Because as the examiner might get irritated by looking at your answers कि इसने 2 pages दिए और intro में ही पौना page खत्म कर दिया. So that is something which should not be done. Apart from that, consistency is one thing in answer writing. Do write 2 to 3 answers daily. Suppose if you're done with quality, if you're done with making your own notes, start attempting answers of it. And the best question bank is previous year questions, because they are framed at UPSC standards, and that should be the focus. Apart from that, I'm seeing this question: what, how to prepare for CSAT? See, CSAT these days has become very dicey, and even the attempt in which I cleared prelims, I was scoring around the edge, and I'm very good at CSAT, around 80, 85. So I was shocked at it. CSAT, the levels have gone up, and how to prepare for it? I must suggest, if you have a maths background, then just look at 3 to 4 years of CSAT papers and divide the various categories of questions which are being asked. Like clock questions are always asked, like work and time which is being asked, and prepare them on your own. Do practice them, and passages and paragraphs as well. Do practice. If you are not from a maths background, then I'll suggest either you purchase a good book, R.S. Agarwal or any good book, and you try to understand. And if you're not able to understand that, then you can take help from any coaching institute you want. So it is very important these days to uh, do dedicated preparation for CSAT, because I've seen many selected candidates as well who reappear again, who have flunked at CSAT.
First question is, how can working professionals prepare for this exam? Of course, you have answered this also, but you can answer this in a question answer format. How can working aspirants prepare? That is the first question.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, for working professionals, it is all about the time you could squeeze, right, out of your office schedule, after your office schedule or in the office schedule as well. So what I'll suggest is ki if you are starting with the preparation, then attend your online classes or any kind of classes after the office, and keep the morning hours before joining the office for revision and for your own validation. And if you have completed the syllabus and you are just into the cycle reappearing again and again, then you just need to hone your skills. So then take out a solid 3 to 4 hours in the morning and then hone your skills there. The thing I talked about, the mains content building, that you do in the morning, and if it is for revision, that you can do in the evening, and do carry one hobby alongside to reduce the stress levels.
Sir, somebody who is preparing, who is doing a 10 hours job, how much time should he devote to his civil services preparation?
10 hours job, you need 8 hours of sleep. 2 hours, I think, for eating good food and for doing your own chores and for yourself, and 4 hours I think he should devote. Well, practically, if he can devote 4 hours, that is more than enough.
What could be the best strategy for college students?
See, for college going students, see, I started preparation in my second year of college. So engineering is a 4-year degree. So I started in the midst of second year. So there is always an advantage if you start early, because number one, there is no pressure that you have to appear in the next year. So you can be very fidgety and you can try out new things. Okay. One is this. Second advantage is you can complete the syllabus A to Z. काफी अच्छे से. So what I'll suggest is, if you're in college, if you just entered the college, so start early. Start as early as it's possible for you. And if you're in your final years of college, what I'll suggest is either you do on your own, join some coaching institute and attend those classes regularly. Whatever you do, maintain consistency in your approach. That will help you out.
Right. Sir, is there any generic timetable for working professionals that can fit all formula, something like that?
See, if it is for generic timetable, what I'll suggest is, suppose you get free at 7, right, from office. You reach back till 7, you reach back your room till 7. So take a power nap, right, for 15 minutes, have your dinner. If you could spare, uh, do at least 1 hour or 2 hour of prep there. If you got to watch some classes, so watch some classes, or do whatever you feel like, and sleep at 10. Sleep at 10, you need 7 hours of sound sleep, right? Wake up at 5. From 5 to 8, you can study, you can add value to your content, you can revise what was being taught in the evening class, and then you can get ready for office and join the office. And there are breaks in between office. So newspaper reading is something which is a light thing to do. So in those breaks, in your lunch breaks, you could always listen to newspapers. But there are podcasts as well. You can listen to podcasts as well in those breaks.
Right. Should working professional make handwritten notes?
See, not only working professional, everyone should make handwritten notes, because UPSC is all about how your answer is different from, number one, are the basics that you have to write within the context. You have to write what is being asked. Second is how different is your answer, because the examiner there is checking the same answer in 1,000 copies. So if you'll write something different, which will only come that if you have read or prepared different. So when you prepare your own notes, you add things by searching from here and there, and that makes your answer different. Because that is very important. So for that, handwritten notes is a must. Concise notes, structure based, like I elaborated earlier.
Right. So with this, we have covered working professional domain. Now we'll shift to answer writing. So somebody asked how to understand the demand of the question, how to tackle the body of answer writing. Is there any structure of answer writing, and how to tackle the demand of the question?
UPSC is narrowing down the debates a lot nowadays. है ना? So generic things are now, they're gone now. Now you gotta be very focused on the answer writing approach. So if I may look at some previous year question, just pick out any society 2020 previous year question.
Yeah, let me do that. Meanwhile, you can answer other questions also.
Yeah, I can answer other questions then.
Yes. So the other questions are how to really make notes for history, art, and culture, because they are quite lengthy, and how can we do that?
See, in history, for example, if we talk about modern history, uh, notes from mains perspective are a must, and that can be made simply from Spectrum or one some standard teachers whose notes are available on open source. So what you got to do is, for example, there are movements in history like civil disobedience movement, like NCM. So make a structure out of it. There is one hallmark of every movement. For example, Swadeshi was the first political struggle in India. For example, in NCM first time, extra constitutional means of struggle were used. In CDM also there is one hallmark. So that can be used as a validation material. Then there are causes for the movement. Then there are the various methods which were being used in that movement, the various impacts it had on British, on Indian society and culture, on the freedom movement. Okay. And after that, there is an evaluation of the movement. What were the positives and negatives out of the movement? And then some decent enough conclusion. So, in this format, you can close various debates in history. For example, in modern history, if I tell you the uh, timeline of focus, first you got to do 1857. उसके सारे maps, causes, evaluation, some fancy lines, socio-religious reform movements, then moderates came, moderates का क्या contribution है, extremist का क्या है, then all the movements from Swadeshi, NCM, CDM, Quit India movement, ठीक है, उनके in between the Gandhian phase as well. So ऐसे करके you gotta complete your mains notes and ये सब spectrum में से ही बन जाते हैं. मतलब there is good enough content. Only you should be wise enough to pick and choose कि this is important for mains, this is which is analytical part, and this is which is specifically prelims part of history. So you should pick and choose. For culture, if you to be honest, I never made notes from mains perspective in culture. I always focused upon answer writing and my prelims knowledge uh, for culture, right? And you can quote running examples from your prelims knowledge. So mains notes from cultural perspective is something which I personally didn't do.
Right. Okay, so you asked me to find one question. I found a UPSC 2020 society question. That is how has caste lost its relevance in understanding the multicultural Indian society? Elaborate your answers with illustrations.
Keyword being caste has lost its relevance. And how? From A to B. Number one is this. Second is, has caste is lost its relevance? So you being aspiring for a bureaucratic job, you have to never answer in one direction. Okay? It has to be both a yes and both a no as well. Okay? Second, this thing should be clear. Third, an ancillary topic is in multicultural Indian society. Right? So you start by anything that India is a society with a lot of diversity. Any decent enough intro that there's this famous author saying that I visit other countries as a due to the sheer diversity it has. So any intro quotation base you can give. After that, you gotta hit. There are multiple diversities which are in India. Okay? Multicultural, multi-diversity, and that you can make a flowchart की diversities. And after that, straightforward 2-3 lines intro, side पे diagram, like this is the page, 2-3 lines intro, side पे छोटी सी diagram जिसमें multiculturalism अपनी show कर दी, and उसके बाद सीधा कि how caste is losing its relevance, right? For example, that concept of purity and pollution that is missing, that concept की commensality की जो कच्चा फूड और पक्का फूड की डिस्टिंक्शन दैट इज गोइंग मिसिंग. ठीक है, तो ऐसे करके we can write various points in which caste is losing its relevance, like occupation based segregation that is also being hit now in the modern society. So with and these explanations should be in how process, like with the coming of constitution, with the coming of equality, with the coming of right to work, the caste based notions of occupation, they have taken a backseat and have are losing their relevance, right? So you can write in this format. Now after that, the other part of the question is ki no, caste still has its tentacles into many things. For example, in marriage, for example, there is this saying that caste is thicker than blood. There were advertisements in newspapers in which the person not only demanded blood of a particular blood type but also from the same caste as well. So caste is thicker than blood. So that is also some patterns. And then we can conclude that caste now is not rigid but flexible. It is changing with the changing demands of time. For example, caste in economics, right? We have Dalit Chambers of Commerce. So it is playing as a pressure group for the so-called lower caste, and it is working brilliantly for them. So we can end with a positive conclusion. So this is how you got to break the question into various parts in mains.
Right. So somebody is asking if a particular question starts with would you or should you, should it be? So how can we provide a non-partisan answer to that question? Would you?
Should you, similarly, whenever they ask your opinion, keep one thing in mind, you've got to give both sides. Okay? You don't have to stick to one particular side. You may be biased towards one particular side, that you can explain more, that you can explain with more cogent arguments, but you got to explain the other side as well. Okay? And a good approach is, there would be one side which you will prefer less, right? So you give it earlier in your question, keep small space for it, and then the side you want to take, explain that more, and that towards the end of the question. So this is one approach you could do.
So should we, one question is how to use data in answer writing, and especially about judgments, landmark judgments. Should we note all of them, or is there any specific judgment we should be noting down?
See, landmark judgments you should do topic wise. Like when you're preparing your content in mains, no? So then when you search in Google, if there is some landmark judgment regarding that, write it in your mains answer only. For example, if it is for decriminalization of section 377, the Dilpreet Singh case is there, which also talks about constitutional morality. That popular morality should not supersede constitutional morality. This is a line you can quote anywhere, wherein majoritarianism it hampers constitutionalism, right? So ऐसे करके interlinking भी कर सकते हैं. उसके अलावा data, how to use data. Number one, you can use data readily in intros. If you got some report regarding the topic, you can start off with that report, such as being asked in the question as well. Second, you can use data in the points to substantiate your points. For example, if the question is about examine, you can always put data as an example format to examine that particular point. Then you can use data in forms of graphs. Okay? In economics, the graphs become very important, like savings, gross, fixed capital formation graph. They become very important. So you can use data in that format as well. And maybe if there is some positive data, if there is some forward-looking data in which we have done well, that you can use in conclusions as well. We are on track, which is shown by this data, but there is always scope for improvement, which we'll do. So in all the three aspects, in body, intro, conclusion, data could be readily used, and you should prepare data. And the method of preparing data is when you're preparing your content itself. There should always be one bifurcation of data in the structure of your topic.
Right. Somebody has an engineering optional. How does he manage answer writing with GS subjects?
I was from an engineering background, right? You presented me a question. So what I did was I just mechanically broke the question into various parts. Okay, in GS, it is very easy for an engineer to break the question into mechanical parts and then write and address each and every part and score good enough marks. Okay, the main problem which engineering background people get is in optionals, because in optionals you gotta be subjective. You gotta write quality content and with flow in your answer. So therein you have to practice this art of subjectivity. In GS, it's very much mechanical. Like it was how to, you gotta write in terms of a process. You gotta write a decent intro. You got to write that caste is having its relevance, then caste is losing its relevance, and then a forward conclusion. Right? So it's very easy in GS for engineers to write. However, if you opt for arts or some optional like that, for example, I had sociology optional and I toiled a lot in writing answers in sociology. So in that sense, you could, in optional, you gotta be subjective. In GS, objectivity will work, provided you got a good content.
Right. How to approach GS4 in terms of answer writing?
How to approach GS4? Okay. So GS4, the most important thing is, see, there are two kinds of aspirants in GS4. One whose bent of writing is very subjective and they have a natural style of answering in GS4. And they score pretty well by their natural style only. And if these kind of aspirant, they study more and more regarding ethics, their natural style gets hampered and they start scoring less. One is this category of aspirants, which are very less. The majority chunk is whose natural style is, due to the influence of other GS parts, it has become very mechanical, like breaking the question into parts and a little less subjective. So in that, for the majority aspirants, number one is content. Prepare our content from 2 to 3 sources. And while preparing content, for example, if it is for integrity, right, holding your principles in the utmost esteem. So what you got to do is one simple definition of integrity and one example from the common life, from your own life, from your own example, that when you showed integrity, one example from the public life when integrity was shown by a public servant or by a public figure, so that you could prepare. So examples come in very handy, and not only examples, history comes in very handy in ethics. And if you mention history, like if you mention some incidents from Mahabharata or Ramayana, so those put a very good impact in your answers. So anecdotes, examples, some famous personalities. So these you should be well prepared apart from the regular core syllabus ethics. And if I talk about answer writing, ethics is one of the lengthiest papers in all the GS, and it is very difficult to complete. What my strategy was, I used to attempt case studies first, because what happens is in case studies sometimes you got to invent points, and if your brain is exhausted after writing those 8 to 10 questions, and you might not be able to think out of the box. So for that reasons, I always attempted the case studies first, so that my mind is fresh when I'm looking at a new thing. Because in the syllabus questions you might have prepared something, in case study it's altogether a new thing, right? After that I used to attempt my syllabus questions, and this was one strategy that I used in appearing for GS4.
Right. Last question for note making in this answer in this domain. I'll club 2 questions. One is how to, should we make notes of standard books like Lakshmikant? Second, how to make notes for economics. So yeah, basically they're asking if we should be making notes of standard books like Lakshmikant, Spectrum, economics, whatever standard book they're referring.
Making notes out of Lakshmikant is something which is not advisable, because it is fact loaded and it will be a replication of effort, because you won't be able to explain anything. What you got to do is make notes of polity, not Lakshmikant. Make notes from mains perspective of polity as a subject, right? So for that, either you refer to your class notes, refer to some toppers notes which is available on open source. For example, Anudeep Durishetty sir, he was rank one, and he has compiled all his notes and put it in his blog. And there are very good notes of quality of his which are being uploaded, so you can refer to them. So make notes from mains perspective. It is a futile exercise to make notes, but because anything under the sun is coming out.
Right.
And the structure of making notes, that even if you have not done from any source, you just put UPSC keyword, prepare it from 2 to 3 sources, bifurcate into various headings, fill those headings from those websites, and then prepare a holistic coverage of that particular topic.
Right. So we have covered 2 domains. One is working professionals and one is note making and answer writing. Next domain we'll be moving on is current affairs. So yeah, should we rely on monthly magazines and newspapers? This is one basic question. Yeah, please answer that.
So my theory was always कि replication of effort नहीं होना चाहिए, right? So I'll quote one incident. पहले भी शायद कभी बताया हो कि there was this medical tragedy in UP sometime, that oxygen was missing, Gorakhpur medical tragedy. So what happened was कि medical governance पे बहुत article आने लगे, right? तो around 6 to 7 days medical governance पे article आए. मैंने वो सारे article पढ़े. It would have taken me at least 2 hours in 6 to 7 days to read those medical governance articles. अब वो पढ़ने के बाद I made my own notes medical governance पे. Then I wrote a good conclusion model, Tamil Nadu model of medical governance I wrote. Right? तो उसके बाद क्या हुआ, जब month के end में monthly magazine आई, तो not only those points but additional points as well, और conclusion में वो वही तमिलनाडु governance के साथ 2-3 और points भी. और then I felt कि I spent at least 3 to 4 hours on this one particular topic, and somebody else has done better than me and provided it me for free, right? So replication of effort is something you should always avoid, and especially as a working professional. So from that was something which was a turning point in me making notes out of newspaper. So I stopped making notes and I referred to the monthly magazines for it only. Apart from that, the usual strategy for current affairs is for mains, right? After you clear mains, then you till the time it is for prelims, you look at the monthly magazines from a prelims perspective. Suck out information which is important for prelims, right? After you clear prelims, then you look at the magazines from a mains perspective. This was what my approach was. And apart from that, for prelims in newspapers, you gotta have a lateral thinking approach. That if you find something, if you find a new term, if you find a new place, if you find a new national park, search about it on Wikipedia, search about it on Google, collect additional information, random information, because that will store in your brain laterally. Don't think about retaining that information, that will be stored in your brain somehow and will be able to eliminate. Okay. And if you want to make notes from newspaper or not, my advice after trying a lot is that you make a diary and write good examples, good data, good anecdotes subject wise into your diary from the newspaper instead of making copious notes. Those anecdotes, examples, recent incidents, some data, some graphs, some quotation of a renowned author, that will help you a lot in mails rather than making notes out of the whole topic.
Right. Should we include Yojana, Kurukshetra, PIB, etc., in our current affairs preparation?
See, when you're very new to the preparation, no, so Yojana, Kurukshetra, they help you to broaden your horizon, and they help you to how to open a debate, how to close a debate, how to maintain flow, because the articles there are very beautifully written. So when you're new to the preparation, like when you have just started for the first 4 to 6 months, after you're done with getting the essence of it, uh, if you're a veteran, then after your prelims, what you do is you just pick up 11 to 12 yojanas which were being asked and just go through the topics of those yojanas. If those topics are something which you have already done in your content, so you can skip or you can just add some tidbits from those yojana articles as conclusions or as intros. Uh, Apart from that, if you have not done that topic, then you might just skim through that yojana. Don't read it, just skim through the Yojana articles. Right.
Right. So next question, Dilpreet, is how should we prefer monthly magazine versus YouTube daily analysis? What should we prefer more?
I think it's a very personal choice whether to follow monthly magazines or the daily YouTube analysis. Uh, if you have time, I think you can always go for daily YouTube analysis. It helps you to churn things in a better way because it gets stored in your audio visual memory, right? When you listen to things in the audio visual platform, so then things get better. And if it is for monthly magazines, if you're short on time, then you can always refer to monthly magazines. Till prelims, you read those magazines from a prelims perspective. After prelims, you read it from a mains perspective.
How much time do we actually devote to current affairs?
See, I think if you're appearing for the next year, hmm, what you got to do is do the magazines from a prelims perspective, right? So try to finish the magazine one day. In one day, one complete magazine you should finish, and then you should try to not only finish the magazine, at the end of the week you should try to revise that magazine with one of your friends. This is one approach you could take. And apart from that, if you're finishing the this main strategy for current affairs we were discussing now.
Yes. We were discussing the time that we should be devoting for current affairs daily on a daily basis.
Yes. Yeah. One is key prelims, from a prelims perspective, finish the magazine in one day and then revise at the weekend with one of your friends. Right. And apart from that, what you could do is when you clear prelims, then you revisit those magazines from a mains perspective. And like if it is a 12 months magazines have come, right? So take out economy, take out the various topics which are being asked and discuss with one of your friends. So this is how you can approach.
Right. So we'll move to next segment, that is optional. So I think you had sociology optional, right?
Yes.
So people, some of them are asking about your strategy for sociology optional. If you could summarize it in briefly.
So for sociology optional, my strategy was number one, I prepared content from various sources, right? And those various sources were One was my class, sir. One were notes from Smriti Shah ma'am. One were notes from Vikas Ranjan sir. So I took various notes which were available in the market, and then I clubbed and made my own notes out of it. Right. So one common approach I had in note making was one common approach in note making. Not only in optional, in GS as well. Like I used to bind my copy horizontally in landscape mode. I used to write on 70% of the space and leave 30% of the space blank on every page. And that 30% was meant to be my addition to my notes. So I used to add and write there. Okay, after adding from 2 to 3 sources in optional, I got a good quality content. So what I did was I then revised that content once, twice, thrice, and then I took A4 sheets, big A4 sheets, and I bifurcated those A4 sheets into very small rectangles, right? And then I wrote every chapter on one A4 sheet, one chapter of optional on one A4 sheet, and micro handwriting with all the structure, like I earlier told, like if it is for alienation, Marx's concept of alienation, what is its definition? What are the various types of alienation Marx discussed? What is the relevance of alienation today? What conclusion did he give of a free man, of an independent man? So this is bricks format, basically, dividing the topics into the various bricks it had and then jotting it down. So this is how I compiled the optional. Like if it is 10 chapters, I had 10 sheets in which my whole entire paper one was completed. So those 10 sheets I could revise in 5 days. 5 days, 5 दिन मिलते अपने को optional के लिए, तो उन 5 दिन में I could revise those sheets.
Right. Beginners are basically asking how to sociology. Somebody is saying psychology versus sociology, pros and cons. Somebody is saying PSIR versus sociology, pros and cons. So how does somebody decides an option if he or she is confused between 2 or 3 options?
See, deciding your optional, I must say in ethical terms, aptitude and attitude, right? So one is your aptitude if you are good at one particular subject, if you feel you're good at it. For example, somebody might be good at psychology, somebody might be good at maths. So you should always give it a try. That you should see the optional and how to approach an optional, whether you could do that or not. Just pick out the syllabus, pick out 3, 4, 5 previous year questions. Yeah, pick out the syllabus, pick out 3 to 4 previous year questions, 3, 4 years ke jitne bhi, and then try ki if you doing that syllabus, you could answer those previous year questions easily. For example, if it is for maths, if you could complete the whole syllabus properly, right? So this is what is required. So after that, you rationally decide. Second is attitude. Now, attitude is like if you want to go for that optional, which is scoring well, in which has a general trend of scoring well. So that is one thing, because an option might score well one year, but it might not score well the next year. So it is always preferable. First, give preference to your aptitude. However, carefully check if that aptitude can be realized into marks in optional by analyzing the previous year questions, and then you can go for attitude. If your aptitude is not fit, then go for aptitude. Attitude ki koi bhi doing well along with its syllabus that it's easy to grasp, you can do.
Right. So we'll enter our last segment, that is miscellaneous, where we'll take all the sections all those questions which we could not take earlier. So yeah, we have a variety of questions here. The first question in this segment is prelims trap, especially with reference to CSAT. So people from humanities background these days are not able to clear CSAT. So yeah, how they manage, or should they manage this?
So for CSAT, like I talked earlier as well, one is ki people with maths background, they could self-analyze 3 to 4 years CSAT paper, segregate the various bifurcations which are being asked, and after that, then they could what they could do is prepare on their own from some standard book. Second is people who are weak at maths. What they could do is either they could buy the book, buy some standard book, and try to solve questions from that. If they're unable to do that, they can always seek some professional help in CSAT, because it has become very dicey and important that you score above the required cutoff in CSAT. So this is the very simple strategy. You should focus on CSAT.
So few strange questions. A few people are in school. One is in ninth standard and one is in 11th standard, and they aspire to become an IAS and IPS someday. What should you advise them?
See, for my advice to them is number one, focus upon what is in hand right now. Okay? Focus upon their studies. If it is in ninth, if it is in 11th, focus upon the present. Don't look too much into the future. What you could inculcate is some tips in your daily habits. Like you start watching, if you're watching TV and you're killing time on TV, then at least watch half an hour with something which is relevant, like the big TV, big show on
Rajya
for
Sabha.
international relations.
Yeah.
So some interesting things you could do. Watch some debates on TV, which will help you enrich your knowledge, so that a base is set. If you're so hell bent on coming into this field, so set a base for yourself and start reading newspaper. That won't harm you. Not only the sports section, but the editorial section.
Right. Somebody wrote being a working professional, 4 hours of study.
Attention,
Residue.
attention residue. Okay. See, what happens is there are levels of motivation you have, right? One is a person is so internally motivated that his attention residue won't be there. Okay? He has, because to be very honest, competition in UPSC is very cutthroat, right? So if you're lacking at any one particular type, field, or sphere, so there is high probability that you might end up not clearing the exam. So you got to use this not in a negative sense, but in a positive sense to push yourself every time. One is internal motivation. Second is external motivation. That you could always keep your surroundings such that the attention deficit it gets reduced. Like keeping your watching the video classes, the online classes on a tab rather than mobile phone. Keeping your mobile phone on D&D, do not disturb for those 3, 4, 5 hours. And even to reduce the stress, you could do some easy yoga exercises in between the classes as well. You got flexibility.
Right. So, how to approach syllabus which are not covered in the standard books? UPSC is going beyond standard books these days. So, somebody is asking, especially
We
for
have
environment,
we
especially for
have this
environment.
blessing of Google.
Yeah.
So just whatever topic it is, anything under the sun, you type in Google, you'll get info on it. And after approaching the such a huge syllabus, you become intelligent enough to know what is important from UPSC perspective and what is not important. And not only the websites you can always open the news section as well, in which editorials from Indian Express and other newspapers will open, and that you can use.
Right. Is there any platform where sources of previous question can be analyzed?
Is there any platform?
Yeah.
So in my case, I always relied upon self-analysis. I think CivilsDaily also provides answers to previous year questions
Yes,
on
we
their
do.
website,
We do that.
right? So always, uh, always be intelligent and wise enough. Don't stick to one particular thing. ठीक है, be wise enough to make a judgment कि हाँ इस वेबसाइट ने ये आंसर अच्छा दिया था, इसमें नहीं दिया था अच्छा, तो मैं इधर से कर लेता हूँ. ठीक है, that is something that self-analysis thing will help you not only here but in mains answer writing as well.
Somebody is missing prelims by 2 marks, 5 marks, 6 marks, very, very, very few margins. Should he take a break? How does he clear this hurdle?
No, if you're missing by 1, 2 marks, then you don't need a break. You just need more practice, more mocks into prelims. You need to master that art of answer writing. And the second thing is, you might be not answering correctly those questions which are of basic syllabus. Okay, you got to revise your basic syllabus and practice a lot of full marks. That will do the trick, I think.
Right. Can you provide your notes? Do you have a Telegram channel where do you provide your own notes, which you made?
I have not scanned my notes as such in a digital format, but if I do, I'll surely provide. Not an issue.
Right. So, final question: how to stay
Yes.
how to stay motivated and consistent in
Stay
this
motivated.
preparation, and how to keep how to take care of our mental health. Mental health.
Mental
Yeah.
health. Okay. So, motivation, like I earlier talked about, one is motivation which stems from the fact that the competition is very cutthroat. Okay? So, you gotta stay motivated, you gotta keep going which might come from topper stories. Okay? Positive motivation, which might come from your immediate family whose aspirations are dependent upon you. And then how to tackle the mental health issues. What I'll suggest is number one, keep goals which are micro goals and which are reachable, right? Body satisfaction out of it. Number two, if you gotta stay motivated, what you gotta do is keep your balance intact. Like keep pursuing some hobby. Be it in hobbies I talked, like be it sports, be it music. If you're like listening to music, just listen to music so that your stress levels are down. Or even if you like talking to one of your friends, talk to him so that your stress levels are down from the exam. So these are some tricks. Baki, this is a very personal thing, that how you keep motivated and keep track of your mental health. Herein, what I'll suggest is, if you're blessed enough, do talk to your parents daily, because they are the biggest source of motivation, and that latency function, the controlling of those hormones. Your family is your biggest pillar of strength. ठीक है, तो keep them, always keep them in, be it your failures, be it your success, be it if you're scored low in a test, be it if you're scored high in a test, because not only will they be able to relate कि हाँ बच्चा बहुत मेहनत कर रहा है, but they'll actively support you and give you tips from their own life experience. So family should be kept in the loop.
Absolutely. So I also agree with this. So we have taken all the domains. We have covered working professionals. We have covered answer making, answer writing, note making, current affairs, miscellaneous questions. This session will be recorded. It is recorded and it will be uploaded on the YouTube. So all those who have joined us now and they are asking questions, we have covered these questions. You can watch it on YouTube. So thank you so much, Dilpreet sir, for joining us, for taking out your precious time. And yeah, it was a pleasure interacting with you, and I hope it was helpful for all of our audience.
Thank you, Saket. Thank you everyone for joining. And happy preparation.
Thank
Stay
you.
happy.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
the best everyone. Thank you. Good night.